Hello, all. Welcome to Hello Future Buzz. It is the 7th of July, 2022, sorry. And we'd like to welcome our featured guest, Michael Mumbauer of Liithos. Hello, Michael. Can you hear me?
I can. Hi. Nice to be here.
That's great. Let me introduce the panel today. We have Lance Lothridge, who's co hosting. Hi, Lance.
Hi, everyone.
And Charles Marquette is also co hosting with us today.
Yo, yo, yo.
Okay, and there's Wayne Drutsky. Yo, 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 Wayne.
Yo, yo.
And we have May Chan from Hashpack.
Hello, nice to be here.
Thank you. And Eric from Dropper NFT. Hi, Eric.
Hey, everybody. How you doing today?
Great. We're very excited about having Michael on and learning all about ethos with your tag of From Impossible to Inevitable, Michael. So for our community who hasn't met you yet, we know a lot about you from all your tweets, but we'd love to have you introduce yourself to the Hedera community.
Sure. Hi, everybody. It's nice to be here. Thanks for joining. Super honored to be here and meeting with all you. I'm very excited to be a part of the Hedera family and just excited about the future of all the stuff we can produce together. My background is in entertainment. 20 plus years, maybe 25, I stopped counting. Most of that time in games and then some time in film. Nearly 20 years of that time at Sony across Sony ImageWorks on the film side, and then PlayStation on the video game side. And I left in 2020. Did a short stint, created a studio for Smilegate called That's No Moon. And then just this year created Liithos, which is kind of the culmination of 20 years of experience after kind of researching a lot of the new kind of Web3 space and, where things are headed. I felt like it was about time to I could really jump in and start to realize something I've always wanted to do, which was, kind of big, bold IP transmedia connected worlds, and starting in the space that I love and that I know, which is AAA action adventure narrative driven games, and then things scaling outside of that into all kinds of other spaces. Spaces like social media and film and TV, comic books, music. So it's just the beginning of an ecosystem that I want to grow over the next decade minimally. That's the short story.
It's a great story, Michael, and we're all supporting you. Could you tell us a little bit about why you selected Hedera?
Absolutely. I really believe in Hedera's, mission. Obviously, I'm very environment conscious, and it's really important that we can still build stuff technologically that kind of advances the mediums that we're trying to create in, but do so in a responsible way. And so that was a big part of it. Also, just, as I was speaking and meeting with Hedera, people like Alex and David, and I just really fell in love with the leadership, with the direction. I know there's a lot of great support for other AAA gaming ecosystems with partnerships like Ubisoft, and I hope that continues to grow. My general feeling is that Hedera is the place for gaming to thrive. I think it's going to be is the future. I think it's the only logical partner for Liithos to be doing this, and so I'm very excited to be here with Hedera.
Well, we're really excited that you selected Hedera, and we couldn't agree with you more that the future of gaming on Hedera is really very bright. Well, there's a lot to talk about with Liithos. From you did your first mint today of NFTs. You did a teaser about the comic books you're putting out, and who in the Marvel and world that you Marvel and DC Comics that you snagged. Maybe you can give us a little little hint on that. And you also have Asphalt updates. So where would you like to start? The
Yeah.
NFT, the teaser?
Yeah, so it's great that we it was a good day to do this. Yeah, we did the minting the first NFTs, and that was a great success, and it's really a great way to start the community. I'm so excited to, this is our first step into, the next phase of our growth as a community, and also just building the kinds of things that we want to build to be able to reward people early on for, being a part of the Liithos community. So the main function of the founders NFT is really to sort of create a very easy entryway into the community that creates long-term kind of membership rewards into the game. And then also, just some fun, almost like, giving away some of the really special things that got us here, like the first issue of Asphalt comic. In the comic world, one of the most precious commodities of a comic book is especially if it's traditionally created, which the Asphalt comic is. Very famous penciler Brett Booth did the cover of the first issue, so we're going to be giving that original artwork away,
Oh, wow.
as part of the reward for being one of owning one of the founders tokens. And that's just one of the ways in which we're looking at kind of creating really, really special opportunities for holders of that token. The goal of the comic really is the ability to show the community and show the entertainment world that this is a start of a narrative driven connected world. We know we're making a AAA action adventure game that is going to have a deep story and really, really engaging characters and perpetual play, and hopefully just an amazing thriving community that we create a really meaningful economy behind, meant to enhance the play. But really at the core, it's about building worlds that start in stories. I think that's what brings people together, and comics are a really fast way to introduce people into these really great worlds. It takes years to develop a game, and fortunately, within the course of this year and next year, we'll be able to release several comics that will kind of flesh out some of the characters in the world. But because they're going to be digital NFT tokens, that will have a meaningful connection to any of the owners into the games and anything else that we create that's connected to the Hedera network. So I just think that's the part that it really excites me in the world I grew up in. It's great to have a comic book. I love them. I read them, but it doesn't do anything, right? So the world that we're kind of moving into is that we can create these amazing pieces of entertainment that we love, but it doesn't end with the read. We put down the comic and it becomes an object on our shelves and we can read it again later, but that's really all of the value of it. And the opportunity here is to create something that actually is almost like a door. It's a conduit to other things. Not only do you get to read this really special story and be at the beginning of the world, but it's forever a conduit. So that to me is just incredibly exciting.
Oh, absolutely. May, did you have something that you'd like to contribute?
Yeah, I really love this angle, and I saw the comic book angle on your website, and I saw right here that, you know, you guys, I think you're approaching NFTs and gaming and Web3 in the right way. It's not just like a way of tokenizing a game, it's a way of drawing people in, it's a way of creating community. And I think that if you look in the Web 2 world, in the traditional gaming world, there are lots of efforts of companies that are trying to build that world. You look at something like, I don't know, League of Legends, and they have events all the time where they bring a story out, and they have their own little comic books inside of the game that you go and you read and you participate in, and they give you tokens and stuff that help you participate. And this is the sort of thing that really drives people to enjoy the game more, get immersed in it, And I think that Web3 is the perfect way to sort of take that and expand on it and give more opportunities to players and more opportunities to become part of this community. And then it becomes something very special, right? And then it's not just about crypto and making profits and pay to earn or whatever like that. It's about value that gamers really love and appreciate, and that game developers want to provide for their players, right? So I think that your approach is fantastic, and I just wanted to commend you for that. And this is the first time that I've actually heard of someone doing this in Web3. So for me, you guys are the first ones that have come up with this idea, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, there are others doing it. There's another creator on a book called Huxley, which I think is fantastic. It's sort of one of the things that inspired me to look at this approach, at least from the comic perspective. But, I've always been a comic fan. The vision has always been to build IP worlds, not just, something that is siloed in one area of entertainment. I think the thing that Web3 is missing a little bit, and I don't want to be so presumptuous to kind of judge something that I am, I'm new to this space. So really, I'm actually green, but extremely curious. And I really want, what I just hope to be is coming into the space, learning, right, as much as trying to, do something good. I want to learn as much as I can. I'm not attracted to the rapid monetization models. I don't think that's sustainable. I think when you look at entertainment, there's a reason gaming has risen to the top of almost all of the entertainment sectors. It's that it's got such a rabid fan base. It's not something that you kind of you go to the movies, you'll see Top Gun or the latest movie for an hour and a half, you'll talk about it for a week. It might disappear, and then maybe you don't talk about it for a while, and maybe when it comes on streaming you watch it again. Gaming happens kind of way less disposably. It actually, if you're in the right kind of game, like Minecraft, or Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty, it actually becomes a way of life for people. It becomes something that's an activity that you might do daily, you might do weekly, and it's way deeper. So for Web3, I think migrating the behaviors of creating beloved franchises is going to be key to, bringing Web3 into the limelight of where, technology and entertainment intersect, and that Web3 really can take off for the average consumer. One of the bigger challenges that I've experienced in, coming into Web3 is just there's a little bit of a barrier entry to knowledge, to kind of just getting into certain things. And as we simplify that, I think it'll become very evident the power of Web3 to the general consumer. I think that's the interesting thing, is just experiencing the onboarding and simplifying that as much as possible, and making everything frictionless. So, and then having fantastic content and entertainment as the primary objective, right? The economy absolutely should support that, because games are making, in traditional spaces, insane amounts of economy. But the reality is they start with entertainment engagement first, and then the economy supports that. And if the engagement is there, then the economy will follow. If you're starting with economy first, and then you're trying to force fit a game into an economy, it's really obvious to the core gamers. It's really, really obvious. If you look at the way we're messaging, because it's truthful, we didn't come out speaking play to earn, play to earn, play to earn. It's not a term that I like, to be honest. And I struggled with it when I came out trying to figure out, how do I message, what we're doing in Web3 that potentially gets people excited about Web3, but doesn't alienate the entire base of people we're trying to attract. And if we basically place play to earn all over the advertisements or all over the websites, we kind of lose everybody, I think, at least the people we're trying to get. So I thought really hard about, how do we kind of rethink what this space is about, and I talked to some really educated people that are much more educated than me that have been in this space, and talking about my beliefs and what I'm excited about and what they're excited about. And we came to this kind of idea that speaks to me. And then I kind of, started using this just yesterday, and I think I'm going to start using this, pretty much exclusively, is that if the game is kind of off Hedera network, it's a play experience, right? So if we play it on PC, if we play it on console, it's still the same great game. The problem is you're getting a lesser experience to what you can get with Web3 and where I think the next 10 years plus are going. And so on a console, it'll be a play experience. On Hedera, it'll be a play and own experience. And the reason that the differentiation matters is that I think what's going to be sustainable long term in this space is the ownership, not the coming in, buying things in the hope that you flip everything. Because I don't think the general average population are scalpers. Right? I think there's some percentage of that for sure. But I think the ownership piece is more important. And so I think if we focus on the dialogue of creating the value of ownership, then the other stuff becomes less important. And then I think Web3 starts to really accelerate.
That was fantastic. Really appreciate your approach. And I think it speaks a lot to your experience in this space, really honoring all of the best of what's in gaming and just trying to kind of build around that versus come out and say, creating something new, it's play to earn and it's all about monetization. You did kind of acknowledge that there is some skepticism among gamers about Web3, and there is a bit of a learning curve. So I'm kind of wondering, as you and your team are discussing how to bring this experience to the game players, how are you simplifying the user experience? How are you onboarding non-crypto natives, and kind of what is your strategy around that?
That's a really great question. And every day is a learning experience. I'm going to be honest with you. There's a lot of trial and error here because myself, I would not consider myself like some super crypto user, which I actually think is to my advantage here because I am the average consumer. And in that, I need to be able to feel that I don't need to be a super user to be able to enjoy this experience. So first part is learning the do's and don'ts, learning where the friction points are, and then trying to tackle where I can be a benefit to the ecosystem in a prioritized way, right? So there are going to be pain points that are far greater to getting engagement than other pain points. So I think, again, creating a prioritization list of the ones that are the worst offenders that are going to make people kind of not want to come in is one. Also being really, really engaged with the community and learn about all of the stuff that's happening around me that I don't have to fix, to be honest. Like my goal is not to try to solve every problem. My goal is to make a great game, and hopefully the problems will be solved around me by smarter people than us in the space that have already been in it. But if not, then we will make it a secondary objective to kind of reduce the friction points in the areas that are required to onboard people on our game. And both will work. Eventually we will get there, and this space will absolutely just thrive. There's just no question. That's part of why the impossible to inevitable line exists, because Web3 success is inevitable. There's just no question. What it's going to take to get there is just taking these pain points and reducing them as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think that has it's certainly tackling one of the things that hasn't been tackled. Well, should have been tackled, but hasn't been tackled yet. Where I've even seen something recently that is, somebody stated sell ideas and not products, but that's great. But the Web3 space needs products. It needs we need user engagement. We need great platform gaming experiences to be able to identify the best ways to inject Web3 initiatives into those experiences. And the reason that we don't really have that right now is because everything is being phrased around play to earn. and it's a non-sustainable way to build out a business model from a gaming aspect, I would think, because it's if you look at something like Axie Infinity, right, and the market cap that Axie Infinity was able to garner, more of a market cap than all of the major gaming studios in the entire world combined. What would happen if a platform just built a really great gaming experience and then decided, based on the users and how the users are using that game, the best ways to inject in Web3 experiences? I mean, I think that's something that we haven't seen, and anybody that can do that and make a great game and then inject in Web3 is really going to take the bull by the horns and run with this market, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, that's the hope. So the thing is, in the console space, that's called the killer app, right? So if you're Microsoft, you're PlayStation, you're Nintendo, and you launch a new console and you're trying to win, if you don't launch with killer app software, the consumer is going to spend their dollars on the console that has the software they want to play. Why would that be any different here? Right. So one perspective is, I think what's interesting is that, there's these different DLT networks that are going to be competing to kind of be in the dominant space and attract very similar kinds of engagement that consoles, when they're doing that. But the difference is that hopefully the upside of the Web3 thing is to actually remove silos, right? Actually encourage sustainability of digital assets. I just saw an article, I think it was on Variety, that Sony was turning off or going to be, stopping some of their film studio canal movies. And really, this is where the interesting shift is going to happen, because people, when they buy these movies on PlayStation Store, probably don't realize they just have a license to watch the movie. And that when they decide to turn off the service, the license is no longer valid. And then these people that purchased their these movies, let's say they have a library of 200 movies, that's kind of the rug pull that a lot of the accusations around Web3 is happening. And I think the interesting thing is that I hope the evolution of Web3 is actually more about sustainable ownership, so that there builds that trust and that, credibility, so that these digital assets, can exist really forever, right? So there really shouldn't be a feeling of rug pull for digital assets to have extreme high long-term value. I think that's the interesting part about where the Web3 space is the opportunity. How that's going to be a bit of a difference to the consumer is that if there truly can be, this feeling of safety around your digital assets, the masses will embrace it, especially when they experience kind of stuff like this, where they're like, oh, I thought I owned this.
I just wanted to say that you're absolutely right. And there was also like a game recently this week that they stopped their supporting the game, and the DLCs that people bought went offline, and you can no longer play the DLCs that you bought, even though you can play the single player experience. I think that I can't remember which game or which company that was, but this whole idea of Web3 ownership instead of just leasing out things, I think is a very potent point here.
Definitely. Well, let's get, I'd like to introduce you to Eric Faust, Michael. Eric is working on Dropper, which is a gaming NFT marketplace built on Hedera. So, Eric, if you'd like to say.
Yeah, absolutely, Michael. So it's nice to meet. I know we've chatted in some Twitter DMs here, but I just echo that the Web2 gaming world that we live in and that we work with, it's like the world's biggest rental marketplace, right? Mm-hmm. If you buy a digital asset from a game, you don't really own it, right? Like right. You're essentially renting it, right? But when we talk to AAA devs from the leading publishers in the world, their challenge to us is always, well, how is this more profitable? How do we make more money from doing this rather than running this massive rental model where I buy a skin in Fortnite, I buy a skin in Apex Legends. Well, do you really own it? Like, no, you can just add it to your character in game. I feel like the point you touched on with that lack of ownership, it makes gamers feel like they're not as part of the world as they could be, and B, it's like the idea of, I think, America in general was this idea that a bunch of people came over not to earn a bunch of money over here. It was originally, the idea was so they could have ownership. You know, they'd, our forefathers or whatever flew over here in a boat once upon a time, got to the shores, and they picked out a plot of land, and then they started building in it. So I feel like the evolution of Web3 is not just enabling ownership of, you know, an asset. I think it's like actually help. How do you get these digital communities to help build? So how do you challenge that model, Michael? As when you guys think about going from, you know, probably this rental model that you saw in your time at major game studios to this new evolution of digital ownership?
Yeah. So you know, this is such an interesting. It's such an interesting question, and I don't have every answer right now. I think the thing that, like I told you, is I'm learning. My feeling, what I feel like, the, you know, and again, as we build the game mechanic, which is the key game mechanic that is going to be the one that is the communal one. When we talk about game mechanics, there's tons of different mechanics that are going to be different meanings to different kinds of players. But there's one at the core that at the game that's a part of this game and every game that I want us to make is actually about user-generated experiences that have the players going out into the world, finding things, discovering things. That's kind of, you know, it plays a bit to your kind of colonial, right? It's like perpetually going out and exploring and then finding, and this idea of discovery. But then you find these really interesting things, and then you can kind of bring them back to your, you know, your home base or whatever, and then you build objects of value, right? Vehicles of value that are simple enough to build. They're a part of your discovery and creation. These are concepts that are in some of the most popular games, Minecraft, Roblox. You know, we see our kids building homes and going out and, you know, scavenging, and then, you know, and then coming back and finding. But I think what we need to do is take those elements and bring them into a more mature game, um, in an authentic way. And then what's interesting, and this is that play and own piece, is that if we add that mechanic that you're going out and you're doing this discovery piece, well, you're giving someone a reason to do, you know, something in the world that they feel empowered and excited to do. Then they find it, and then they bring it back and they use it and they craft other things, and that creates value, true value, right? They have built things, they have like Lego sets, they have built their creations, and then they can, you know, then decide it really has true value to me, and I want the community to know that I made this, and I want the community, you know, to see value in my creation the same way I see it, so they mint it, right? And then that creates that sort of ownership piece. So that's, I'm just telling you, that's conceptually where my head is at in terms of where I see the games made. Now, I think those things are not bought in the world. I just think they're found. And I think the community places the value that they place on them, which is the real world, right? It's you know, it's what we as a community decide we're willing to participate and value and pay, you know, for whatever these things are in the world. It shouldn't
Yeah.
be me saying that, oh, hey, this skin, is really, you know, uh, $200 or $500. My current thinking is not to do that. My current thinking is let the community decide what the value of things in, but hopefully that you're making it so that there's enough supply that, you don't have the stuff that's kind of happening in the spaces of around in exclusivity and pricing that is keeping the general majority of people out of Web3. Yeah.
Let's get some other people in here. Patches, would you like to add to the conversation?
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. This is a really cool talk, and congrats on your mints. When it was announced that you guys were coming to Hedera, it's very exciting because I want to, you know, I used to be a game developer, and one of my main things on Hedera is that it kind of brings that ability for quick, fast, carbon negative transactions to happen exponentially, while easily integrating with a web, HTML5 game or something, to allow this Web3 part to port over into a new world. So amazing to see someone's actually a big, powerhouse is spearheading that and coming to Hedera. For the question of how to show value of Web3 for current other game developers, I think there's a couple points that weren't hit I just wanted to add, which I think the main one, if it's a fiscal thing, I think the indefinite royalties on exchanges outside of their stores. So you no longer have a linear income model, but there's residual income aspect as long as you empower your players to interchange in between themselves, is definitely something that will allow dev shops, and I think a little bit more smaller dev shops, to not have to continually put out patches or put out new things just to get linear, income, but it can instead continually enhance an open world experience that has its own funding from the engagement of how good the game is. And so if you're successful and people like playing your game and interact with the game pieces that gain value, you inherently just residually have more income to pay your devs. And then I think there's an entire new innovation playground where like these assets that people earn can now be used inside of, say, like a small guild's DAO votes. And so like if you're a character type and you own some stone or something that allows you to vote, you can now have not a one-way, again, linear path of creation, but you can enable your players to then engage and create their own storylines through autonomous DAO voting, and allow them to dictate story based on what they're engaged in, and they'll be more emotionally attached because they've been a part of these decisions, and can play out in this virtual world what they see and what they want to see. And then just the last point, you talk about digital ownership, and I think what we're doing right now, that's true, but I think this is the bridge to digital identity. And so like people that play World of Warcraft or did for weeks and weeks and weeks on end, they identified as their character, but then that character was siloed into this one world. They didn't own anything from it. And I think that when you're able to take your digital identity from chain to chain, metaverse to metaverse, game to game, the ability for you to abstract any prejudice from who you are as a physical being into who you are as a person who interacts with others and what you decide you interact and look like and what you own, I think that's going to be a really big fundamental just pillar of why people are engaged with gaming in this way and with owning the things that they can earn and just kind of build out, because it's not just, hey, I own that. It's, I really identify as this, and this is how I interact with everyone I interact with in the metaverse.
Let's
I
also,
think that's me.
Patches, do you think it's also an interesting point that I don't think that when gaming and Web3 flushes out, I don't think that anybody's going to be willing to spend $1,500 in a gas fee to load out their character with a pair of socks. I think that like when you like if you look at network stealing and utility, like Hedera with speed, efficiency, like there has to be high efficiency, high utility, and great consensus to ensure that gaming on these networks is really going to flourish. And it's one of the things that I think all of us saw with the NFT space dealing with like Ethereum during the last cycle. It'll be interesting to see how it develops, but certainly nobody's going to be paying $1,200, $1,300 to put on a pair of Adidas shoes.
Absolutely not.
For their avatar.
Okay, Brandon, go ahead. H. Barbeau.
Yeah, Michael, thank you for coming on here and getting us educated. We certainly appreciate what you're doing, and we're excited about it. I guess the question I have is, you make it pretty clear that this is going to take a fair amount of time to develop, and you're doing things to keep people excited with NFTs and the comic books and things like that. How long does this process take? When do we get to the point where, you're finished actually building and your team's actually playing the game, and then to beta and then actually coming to market?
That's a great question. So really, I think the roadmap for this game in terms of its first phase of release is probably 3 years away, which is, I know, scary when you think about Web3. We're seeing a lot of games come out in 6 months, maybe 12 months, and a lot of the crypto investors are looking for those kinds of games often realistically the kinds of experiences that I'm interested in, that John's interested in, and that the core gamers are interested in, take a long time to make. Can that be expedited? Maybe. I think the way to create and keep engagement, there's a couple different ways that I'm experimenting with that. Obviously, the comics are one, but we're building out an IP. So we're building out an IP that is designed for you to see and grow as quickly as possible. Partially that it can grow that fast is because this has already been something John has been working on in terms of written form for over a year and a half, and so that leaves a lot of rich material for us to explore in the game, in comics, potentially even TV and film, and music, and all kinds of other things that happen simultaneously to the development of the game. The other thing that I think is very sort of Web3, at least in my mind, ideology, is the sharing piece. Instead of kind of closing the curtain and then, saying, okay, well, we announced the game. We're going to go, into a room and we'll appear 3 years from now and then you'll see the game. I think that is not a future sort of view of how I think entertainment could be. I'm not even going to say it should be, because really this is just my opinion, and it's John's opinion. But I think that what is really interesting is to expose mass consumers to the process of developing something as difficult as Asphalt is to make, and allowing the criticism of how the sausage is made to be exposed and educate people and gamers and inspire people to become gamers and inspire people to become game creators, and just create a process that shows you, that sort of demystifies. It just demystifies how hard these things are. But also, I think it's going to create a wonderful engagement with people that will see art as it's shifting. The character of Ash that's in the cover of comic issue 1, as crazy as this may sound, 3 years from now may look very different. And in the comic world, that's kind of normal, right? Like if you see over the course of 3 years, Spider-Man's costume changes. Captain America's costume changes. The characters get, in comics, experimentation with art is a normal part of the process. And so I think we're going to kind of inject some of the stuff that I've grown up with and seen into this process and just see how audiences react.
Oh, thank you. Jim Nasser, would you like to comment? And then we'll get some community members to come up.
Yes, thanks, Elizabeth. Hey, everyone. Michael, great job. I just echo everything else that people have said, the positive feedback. I do want to circle back to a comment you were making a little bit earlier at the beginning of your kind of narrative, talking about, well, you didn't say token economics, but I'm going to say token economics, and just talking about this play to earn. And my question is it sounds like you guys are already doing some deeper thinking about gamification, for this, and just want to kind of, if you can share some ideas on that, and also just to give you a little bit of just coincidental feedback. I was working with a client just yesterday, and it's a kind of a consent use case, right? But we were talking about digital assets in this Web3 world, and this comment came up around for instance, scarcity of content, and when you have content with social currency or transferable digital assets in games, and things like, are developers thinking about, for instance, continuity of these assets, right? Because obviously you're paying, certainly in the case of Ethereum, you're paying a lot of money for it, and whether or not you're thinking about things like for instance, what happens if somebody dies, or they lose their wallet, or continuity of these assets, because clearly there's value and at the very least social currency associated to it. So that's kind of general question, but mainly interested in kind of your strategies for gamification.
Gamification, give me a clarification of what you mean by, because ultimately gamification is to me means something that isn't a game, right? Like if you're using like a software for banking, you gamify that because banking isn't a game. But if
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
making a game, you don't have to gamify it,
No,
right?
no, no. What I mean, yeah, to be clear, I mean around token economics, tokenization. That's this idea of transferability, sorry, of digital assets and digital value. That's really what I
Right.
was
So
referring to.
again, again, I'm still kind of getting acclimated to the terminology in the space, and some of this stuff is a little different. So are you kind of referring to like interoperability?
I mean, that could be an element of it. I think part of it could be just around this whole idea of if it's not just a simple like a caricature play to earn, what else is it? Like what other elements are there from a from like a tokenization perspective or token economics perspective?
Yeah. So I'm not sure if I'm going to answer this question correctly, and I think I've got a ton of ideas around the way our game can create a healthy economy. I'm not sure I'm ready to reveal that right now, but I would say that um, one of the aspects of creating an IP universe in Web3 that interested me, that I learned about, just as a concept, in maybe February, March, just sort of had a light bulb moment. And this would be, I think, the gamification tokenization that you're talking about a little bit, which is the stuff that happens outside of the game. That interests me just as much as the stuff that happens inside the game.
Right.
And what I mean by that is that, what you the term that again I don't love, but I'll use it here, is that in the game, the concept of play to earn makes sense. Whatever you're doing that's in the game economy, the player's earning, and then that is a consistent behavior with the stuff that's happening in the game, or in other games. I'm interested in what happens outside of the game and the same behaviors that are like, you know, in the same IP ecosystem. Like listen to earn if you're listening to the soundtrack for Ashfall, or watch to earn if you're watching the television show of Ashfall, or the movie or the comic. Wherever you are, the idea is to create a connected gamification, I guess, and connect it to Hedera, and that you're generating tokens or NFTs from those activities that then connect into the game in a way that actually adds player value. It isn't just like a skin. I think we've only seen a lot of use cases that are mainly around vanity, and I think that there's nothing wrong with that. I think vanity is very, very important. I think that's part goes back to, we talked about, the value of digital identity, and vanity is a huge part of that. And that is, to me, some percentage of the equation. And because I haven't researched the space enough, I don't know exactly what percentage to the core gamers, because our game isn't out yet, that vanity is the thing that they are most interested in. When I go back to a place of Roblox or Minecraft, it's an aspect of it, but it's not the game. So it should be a part of the equation, not the entire equation. And the other pieces that come from outside of the ecosystem really should be additive and connected to, like, what I mean by whatever the activity is on TV should plug into the thing that you are doing in the game. And then when we talked about the sort of residuals and the revenues, I mean, realistically, if there was an amazing AAA, Netflix game, not Netflix doesn't have to make it, okay? But if there was an amazing game that was at the scale of God of War, and there was a television show of God of War, and that show created NFTs or tokens just by the act of watching it in the God of War game, well, then you would potentially add a residual on the objects that are in the game. And if those games were assets and they were traded around, you'd all of a sudden have another economic revenue stream for Netflix.
Sorry,
It
could you
doesn't.
just take my money right now?
It
Thank you.
doesn't entirely rely on subscriptions, and I think that Netflix would hurt less if they weren't entirely reliant on just subscriptions. So I think the entire economy everywhere will benefit from this.
Thank,
Once the revenues are basically connected to the game and everything is bringing in, you're going to see like anytime there's an IP that's outside the game that's actually generating assets in the game that has residuals to the places it stemmed from, every IP is going to be a revenue generating thing for everything it connects to.
That's great. Thank you, Michael. Well, Wayne, you might have a comment, and then I'll bring up Creets.
Blacks generally hold more positive views about video games. Some 19% of blacks say that games promote teamwork, communication, etc. There are lots of studies that show American blacks have different perspectives compared to the average income we make and the amount we allocate for video games. It's definitely a lot of eye-opening stats. My question is, do you plan on having a team member on your staff that is a black individual, obviously with some of these stats, and we participate within the gaming culture, if that makes sense at all?
Yes, it does, and yes, there already is. I can't, again, in some of the coyness, I've had to, not announce all of the team members that are a part of Liithos, but one of the major executives who is in a major segment of, just one major segment of one of the most important disciplines in game creation is a friend of mine, is black, and an incredibly respected senior veteran of gaming for over 25 years. And I can't wait to announce his acceptance into this thing formally. And I would say also, tangentially to that, just so you know, from an advisory role, the person that I am, having my regular dialogue with about how this space operates and how we see this, is a senior CEO of his own metaverse company he's trying to grow, and I'm helping him, and we're helping each other, and he's black, and I adore him. And I think so I don't our whole team is very diverse, but I understand that in the nature of game development is not as in major studios is not as diverse as it needs to be. And so Liithos will be much more diverse from the start, in the executive team. And then I think that will actually generate real impactful cultural value for other people being attracted to Liithos.
Cool. Appreciated that. Like I said, I know you said you can't tell much with certain names, but appreciate sharing that with
me. Soon, I promise you.
Thank you. Well, we have Creets, who's an NFT creator in the Hedera community. Go ahead.
Can you give us a rough idea of how much development has been done? What stage are we in regarding the game narrative, stuff like that? I'm really interested in.
I'm going to give you I asked a friend of mine very closely every time I saw him during the production of Avatar. I said, how close are you to finish? And he said, how long is a piece of string? So I'm going to tell you the answer is, how long is a piece of string? We're in development. It's accelerated because I have such a highly productive team. And the writing is going spectacularly. Art is going spectacularly, and the kind of concept, the prototyping and the rest of the development is underway. I can't really give you a percentage, but the goal is when we start turning on the faucet of all the things outwardly to development, I think you'll see for yourselves.
That's great.
Well, let me follow up with, it sounds like everything's going smoothly. Is there anything that has been going badly, something that's been rough, a weird adjustment you've had to make that's kind of slowed things down?
Not at this phase. Every day something goes bad, and then every day something goes well.
Yep.
So I would say that, nothing that that we in both industries, film and TV, would call or games showstoppers. So no showstoppers.
Thank you so much. Brandon, would you like to go ahead?
So I think it's just great. My question for you is maybe a little forward thinking, but something really fascinating to me right now is thinking about, okay, so we've got these in-game economies. I think it's so cool that you guys are focusing on the aspect of players finding or crafting items that could be in that kind of economy or marketplace. I think that's so cool. But my question is, how do you envision potentially, especially with Hedera, because the concept of Hedera is kind of the shared worlds aspect of people participating in these game economies without actually participating in the game itself, right? Like, that's always been a really fascinating thing to me, because there would be these things in the game that would be of value that might exist or interact with this kind of like secondary market or something. I was just really curious to see if that's something you've thought about in the future of.
Well, so yes, I have thought about that to some degree, but I think that comes down to is the setup of the world in the game that you create and the different roles that the people can play in the world. Again, part of it is you won't know what really people do. Well, you can predict, you can sort of expect when you set up certain things that there are jobs that you may not intend for people to do, jobs, quote unquote, that they'll just naturally, pick up. So for example, right? So if we're making a scavenge based game where you go out and you're finding items, and that's just a part of the core game experience that any player can partake in to build. Well, I can see a world where there are just going to be scavengers. There are just going to be people that go out and their whole function in the world is to just go out and find things. And then there's going to be people that actually buy things from scavengers, I'm sure. And then we're going to have marketplace, right? So we'll have a marketplace in the game. We'll probably put a marketplace on on mobile and on PC that connect to the game that allow people to just become traders, right? And I think that's the function that happens in the real world, right? So I think in any game that has a very well thought through game core loop and then an economy that is natural and a player experience that is fun, then there really shouldn't be anything inhibiting gamers in the game and people participating in the game, even if they're not in the game, much the way they do in the regular world, in exactly the same way. Whether it's in sports, it can be fantasy football on your phone, right? Stuff like that. You don't actually have to play the sport, but you can kind of monitor what's happening and pick players, and you have teams. And so there's these meta things that will happen based on what happens in the game. And there's other games that we have lined up to create that I'm really excited about, to be honest. Like Ashfall is in 1 to 10, I'm 12 excited about it. But I've got other games that I'm also equally 12 excited about that are just total game changers, no pun intended, in terms of, I think, play, competition, economies, rentals, tokenization of things, like just interesting stuff that I think haven't really been explored yet. And I think that DLT networks and the idea of ownership and the idea of, transferring real life behaviors into game worlds and creating jobs as entertainment there's so much stuff that's really cool there.
Well, Michael, thank you so much. We're at the top of the hour, and I think this subject could be discussed for many hours. And we hope that you come back to Hello Future Buzz in the near future. And now that you're part of the Hedera community, please join us every Thursday. We have these spaces, and we really support what you're doing. And we're very excited to have Liithos in the Hedera community. So thank you so much for coming, Michael.
Thanks for inviting me. It's really awesome to be here with everybody, and it's been what an engaging conversation. So you guys are a pretty awesome community, and I'm very thankful to be a part of it.
Great. Well, I want to thank Lance and Charles and Wayne and Jim Nasser and May and Patches and the community for coming. And we'll do this again next Thursday, and we'll keep all the gaming aspects of Hedera in our good thoughts. We have some really great game things coming up in Hedera, and we look forward to the announcement of who's doing the comic, Michael.
Oh, can't wait to tell you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks very much. And I'll end this as we always do with Hello Future. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Ending this space.